All right, Bob, Homeland. Um, yeah, let's get right into it. It's going fast and furious, and so will we. So, uh, early on, we meet this young woman wearing Muslim headdress walking into the CIA, just to jump right into this storyline here. And Saul and Quinn are a bit surprised to see her. Apparently, she only barely started working at the CIA. And it's Dar Adal, that's F. Murray Abraham's character's name.
Hmm.
As he says, he asked for a specialist with language skills after a bombing like that, and this is what you get. Um, but you get started, and early on, we have a scene that I loved, where Saul comes and checks in on Farah. He's a little bit brusque and curt with her, and she's not making much progress. And then eventually Saul starts to get pissed, and he calls her out for wearing the headdress of all things. But he doesn't say don't wear it necessarily. He says if you're going to wear it, you better be an amazing, amazing agent. And we get like this mix of prejudice, yes, but also trying to keep it professional, and also being realistic about the situation, and also trying to actually help her do a good job instead of just make her run away and quit. And you can see all that in Saul's face and his reaction, and I really liked it.
Yeah, I enjoyed that scene too, and she breaks down and has some tears, and it's a lot of things all at once, lots of emotions. It's hard to know which side to be on, if they're really even sides, or if they mutually. It comes out like afterwards that they sort of mutually understand each other, but it's it's still not without emotional tension and some
Yeah.
tears.
So Bob, Brody was the main character of the first two seasons, or maybe Brody plus Carrie, but we haven't seen Brody at all yet, and it seems like Saul is the new main character, at least so far. How do you feel about that?
Well, if it were truly Saul, I'd be probably okay with that, but I think it's a three-way tie so far between
Oh wow,
Saul, Carrie, and Brody's
Dana,
daughter,
Dana,
Dana,
yeah, well,
which is
yeah.
the worst one of the three.
I think there's too much Dana, but we'll get to that once we get to Dana's storyline. I
Yeah,
buried it at the end because that's how important I think it is. I don't know why
perfect.
the show thinks it's so important. So zooming back to Farah and Saul, Farah does actually have a plan after she's quasi yelled at. And so they bring in some bankers to ask about transactions and emails about covering things up. How did they get that email, by the way? Did the NSA just happen to have it in their on the top of their desk and send it over with all that the spying they're doing?
No, I thought it was from Quinn's recon mission where he accidentally killed the kid. He brought home some
Oh,
goodies.
I think you're right. I think you're right now that you mention it. I was a little bit confused at the time, but you're right. He did steal that from the guy whose kid he killed.
Right, and part of the reason I'm struggling a little bit with Homeland so far, just because I'm not sure who the villain is or what we're trying to accomplish. It just seems like we're getting reacquainted with all of our characters that we were interested in before, and most of the interest we have in them is just carried over from we've seen them for a couple of seasons. But is it just me, or is this kind of slow moving here for as action packed as it is? And the strike last time killing 6 people, like I don't. I don't know what we're accomplishing or what's the plot? What's happening? I don't know.
Uh, it, you have a good point, but I have to admit that I didn't really notice it yet. But we don't really have a bad guy. I mean, Daradal might be a bit of a bad guy. Daradal might be that bad guy, but maybe not. I mean, I almost feel like they're setting him up to not be that bad, but just to seem bad. Um, the
Right.
bankers, the Senate committee chairman. I mean, all those people are just caricatures at this point. They're not really our bad guy. Um, yeah, that's a good point. We don't have a bad guy we're fighting against. I guess I'm enjoying the character development that we're getting in these two episodes enough that it doesn't bother me yet. But now that you mention it, I'll definitely be on the lookout and thinking it's odd until that happens.
Okay, cool. Well, sidebar over. We can go back to Saul because I don't know if you were going to ask this question, but I wanted to ask if you have figured out how Saul is doing Carrie a favor or being nice to her, because he seems to have some secret plan, or maybe he's just feeling bad. But I want to believe that what he did to her and in publicly exposing her in that way, like, is for her own good in some way, but I'm still not quite seeing it.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that. Last episode, we did have Saul throwing Carrie completely under the bus after he said earlier in the episode, "I'm not going to throw her under the bus." I don't think that's me paraphrasing. I think he actually said, "I'm not going to throw her under the bus."
Right.
Um, but this time, so she goes and talks to the reporter, and that does set off serious alarm bells in the CIA because, let's face it, she is sort of nuts. She's off her medication. She's pissed, and she has a lot of secrets that just cannot be gotten rid of. So here's how I sort of saw the situation. Tell me if you're on board. Dar Adal, at that point, he's saying, "Oh no, that is not going to happen. I'm going to stop Carrie from doing it," sort of suggesting that he's going to suggest a permanent solution, as they say.
Mm.
And so I get the sense that Saul, he can't. You have to choose your battles as head of the CIA, and if you're really going to go to bat for someone who's an actual liability, you've shot your bullets, and you really can't use your credibility on anything else. So I feel like he's trying to pull it back, to throttle in Dar Adal just a little bit, so that Carrie might have a chance of at least of living, for one, and two of I guess I don't know what's in her future. Seems like she'll have a hard time going back to the CIA after this, but I think he's trying to mitigate what might happen to her if he weren't there. That's all I can see.
Okay, I think that's as good an explanation as we can get at this point. I'm wondering also about the fact that Carrie is the only person who knows the true reality behind Brody and his non-involvement in the bomb that killed everything, and he's suspect number one. And I don't know if Saul knows that, because I don't think we've really recapped it in the new season, but and I don't even remember if at the end of the last season if Carrie and Saul have really had a deliberate conversation about, like, hey, did you know that I was with Brody when the bomb went off and he had no idea that it was really him, or that it was in his car, and that all that stuff. Like, she's the only one apparently who is on that page, unless Saul knows, or does he not know?
I don't think he knows, but you're right. I'm not 100% clear on what happened at the end of the last season, but as far as we go this season, we don't know. And it Carrie's in a weird spot because the last thing she needs is to tell Saul she was hiding something else from him when that was what Saul called her out for.
Right, even though it would be like the most helpful thing ever for him to know, but
Yeah.
oh well.
Um, yeah, okay. Fair enough. But since we're on, well, I guess Carrie and Saul sort of intertwine, but part of what happens is Carrie's going to have this commitment hearing, and Saul goes and talks to her parents, her parent and sister, her dad and sister. Is that who those people were?
Yeah, dad and sister.
And he sort of tells them the situation. Hey, look, I'm trying to keep something really bad from happening. Or she wouldn't talk to Porter. She probably didn't tell you about that. Look, she's hiding things from you too, and that's a big no-no in the CIA. People would probably want to hurt her. And he sort of gets them on his side, at least to the extent of saying, Carrie, we really want you to go on your medication again. And so at the commitment hearing, instead of going through with it, Carrie flips out and runs, which is probably not a good way to win your commitment hearing. And
Yeah.
they put her under false sedation. They don't just put her on her meds. They, like, drug her up with something that makes her barely even able to talk, and I'm sure not even think. So pretty extreme. Pretty extreme.
Yeah, and it's hard to know where the show wants to go with this, because we've sort of seen these, I don't know what to call them, like false positives or positive negative. Like, we've seen this before with Carrie, where the show is about to go off on this sideshow of it being about somebody who has problems with being bipolar and being in need of meds in that way, and how that affects her. And then it'll pull back, and then it's no, Carrie's super important, and she's the only one in the whole world who's smart enough to figure stuff out. And I almost want the show, and I don't mean to speculate because that's not that helpful, but I almost want the show to, like, just pull her off and put her on the sidelines, and that would be like, whoa, a show has never done something like that. Like, she's still in the show, but she's no longer the most important person ever, like she has been in the other seasons. But I feel like it's probably going to do more of the other option, which is, she gets banged up here, but then it'll all be fine in 2 episodes where she's back in a bunker somewhere solving the world's problems.
Yeah, she'll put something together because of what she sees on the news, and she'll call Saul, and then she'll be off her sedation and back in the CIA or something like that.
Reinstated, yeah. Anyway.
So, yeah. Okay. So, as you have mentioned, we're also getting a ton of Dana in these first 2 episodes. We see her and Jess in a counseling session back at the program, and she's Infamous. That's what they call it.
Yeah.
They squabble about whether the bathroom was redone or not, and Dana sees a new boyfriend there. They get back home, and Chris, of all people, is trying to be a peacemaker by telling his mom to ease up, which I think is the most substance we've seen from Chris this whole show. Also,
Mm.
when did he get so tall? Is that the same actor? I mean, I think it
I think it
is.
is. I think it is. Yeah, it's just
But
a growth
wow.
spurt there.
Anyway, Dana bails and goes to visit her boyfriend at the program. Spend the night together, just the two of them and the appliances, as she puts it. So I was going to ask you, but I think I've already heard you say, do you like this Dana storyline, and where do you think it's going?
Yeah, it feels like a lot of filler. And they did kind of an annoying thing too, because I try not to watch previews as much before I watch these shows, but there's a pivotal scene in this episode where we see Dana on her father's prayer mat
Mm,
doing like I guess a Muslim prayer. Um, but I don't know what she's doing, but like when you see the full context of it and not in the preview form, but it's part of the episode, I just don't quite get it. It just felt like a little forced tie-in with her father. She was trying to connect in some way. And by the way, not to be a stickler, but I seriously doubt Brody's garage has been untouched and his prayer mat is just exactly where he left it since he blew up the whole frickin'.
yeah, the FBI or the CIA probably has everything in that room. That's a good point.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I was confused what she was doing with that prayer mat too, because just right before that, she just yells at her mom about how she's not crazy. Neither of them are crazy. It's Dad who's crazy, and he's ruined their lives. But then she goes and she wants to do that prayer that she saw him doing one time. I was confused because I would have thought she wanted to distance himself from him, not try to understand him better.
Right, and it's not clear if she even knows how to do it or what she's doing. I think she's wanting to meditate or wanting some sort of closure or peace to come from it. But I think the show is sort of playing to our interest in having some twist in that way or something. I thought it was a little bit of a cheap shot in terms of the writing, but that's just me.
Yeah, I didn't understand it. I definitely thought at the time I don't get what she's doing that. As far as where the Dana storyline is going, I imagine she's eventually going to lose it again. She seems to be more like Carrie than her dad, come to think of it, as
Oh,
far as mental health concerns. Or maybe she'll become a terrorist like her dad. I don't know. But I'm not really into the Dana stuff, and I don't really know why we care about Dana except as she relates to Brody. Speaking of which, another episode without Brody.
yeah. Now that is the thing. I want to be annoyed, but also want to give props at the same time. Like, all right, 2 episodes without the lead character, the leading male. I don't know what that means, but it sure makes for a slightly different show.
Yeah, I'm excited they've had the balls to keep Brody from us for 2 episodes, and I hope they're planning something good for his return. Um, well, anything else you want to say before we wrap it up, Bob?
Yeah, still interested. Of course, it's a good show. Some slow parts in this one. It almost dragged on a little bit with the Dana stuff. But sometimes you have these middle of the road episodes in otherwise good TV, so I'm still fine with it.
Yeah, I'm on board with the season so far. I still like Saul's transition to a more major character. Crazy Carrie is compelling Carrie. Too much Dana, though. Too much Dana.
Yeah, yeah.
Getting excited to see Brody again, and so far so good this season.
All right, cool.